Yeah, for sure. Familiarity and bonding is a great aspect of an inclusive classroom. Sorry, I went back a little bit. Yes.
I would say learners from all different walks of life because
yeah, learners from all walks of life. That's a great thing. And I'm just letting you know, I'm repeating for the audience at home so they can hear as well. Yes. Yeah, open-mindedness is a really integral part, I'd say. Anyone else? Yeah, accommodations, that's a very good point. Anyone else? Alrighty, we're gonna go to my next slide. So what are some aspects of an effective learning environment? According to R. Keith Sawyer, a Morgan Distinguished Professor of Educational Innovations for the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, an effective learning environment emphasizes deeper conceptual understanding, meaning that studies go beyond learning just the facts and procedures, but prepare students to work creatively with that knowledge, which situations to apply it in and exactly how to modify it for each new situation. Effective learning environment also showcases the importance of building on a learner's prior knowledge, which allows students to engage with the material in a more applicable way. And it also emphasizes the importance of reflection because students can reflect and analyze the state of their knowledge, and it gets them more engaged with the information. Alrighty, my next question is going to be, what are some other aspects of an effective learning environment? Again, you can talk in small groups and then we'll get back together. Alrighty, any answers, any responses? Yeah, patience and modified pacing. I think that's a great answer.
The level of trust in the environment where everyone is comfortable enough to freely share their ideas without fear of being judged.
Yeah, trust is absolutely an integral part. Yeah, listening and communication are also key. Yeah, having student-to-student bonds and also bonds between teacher and student is really important.
Providing like different ways of learning people so that everyone that has a different way of learning.
Yeah, having different ways of learning is also a really great point. Anyone else? Yeah, strong support systems, great.
Have to be comfortable in order to share their ideas with the competition. And also some application to right truth that you gotta get comfortable or they can make themselves more comfortable.
Yeah, comfortability both in the classroom and in the writing center, I think, is very important.
We talked about too energy, having good energy in the classroom or in the center, have it be sort of an uplifting environment. Helps to motivate learning. And then also we talked about empathy being an important factor. Empathy that a teacher may have for the students would have for the instructor, or also the tutor-to-teacher relationship.
Yeah, for sure. Having that uplifting energy and the mutual respect, and mutual empathy, that's a great point. Anyone else? Alrighty. So my next question, what are some barriers to inclusivity and creativity in academic spaces?
I've noticed personally, a lack of awareness of your topics last acceptance, both in the classroom and at home. And the reason why it matters what lives are like at home, from my own experiences, is that transphobia at home, our lives don't end when we walk in class. That's applicable to everyone, teachers, students, treaties, everybody. It's that there needs to be session everywhere in order for the students themselves to be in academic spaces, because nothing changes when you walk into school. Everything's installed with respect on the student. That's very important. Gender identity and queer stuff like that's very important to maintain a very high acceptance for those people. Otherwise, it's children.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Making sure that marginalized communities feel safe. LGBT, people of color, that is when there's judgment against those people, that is absolutely a barrier. Anyone else?
Definitely acknowledging like everyone's voice, because like for me in the classroom, if I have a teacher that is just like not accepting everyone and how they work differently, it's going to make the constantly the teaching and the learning.
Yeah, not acknowledging learning styles, that's absolutely a barrier.
For kids like in middle school and high school, that's when they start becoming like an adult in their own eyes. So it's also like school starts moving. So I feel like trying to make sense of like in the classroom that they kind of like wall that in, like it's the thing like it's like high school is season 2 weeks instead of like closed off, so it's just like open to be able to like express.
Yeah, trying to work with apathetic students, apathetic peers, that's definitely difficult and something that we should be working on.
I don't know if it's a new issue, but and it's not.
I think that applies. Having the different academic levels separating students, I do think that that can be a barrier. Yeah, patience for sure is a great way to try and go against these barriers. Anyone else? Alrighty, I'm going to move on to my next bit. So I will be now discussing the benefits of inclusivity in academic spaces. Felicia Rose Chavez, the author of the Anti-Racist Writing Workshop. I highly recommend this. This is a very important text, I'd say. In this text, she suggests that everyone benefits from an inclusive approach. She explains how she was nervous to implement her anti-racist writing workshop model with all her white students in Iowa. In her writing workshop, her anti-racist writing workshop really hinges on deep listening and trying to make sure that all students are autonomous in their voice, in their writing, in their space in the classroom. And she was, again, nervous about having this, implementing this practice with her all-white class. But her students ended up being really appreciative of how this was going. Her students wrote about how Chavez encouraged a presentness in the classroom and encouraged students to see each other as human beings and also artists. Her students also appreciated the wide range of writing that Chavez introduced to them, writing by people of color, members of the LGBTQ community, and lastly, Chavez's inclusive approach. Her students also were able to think critically about what they read and saw from contemporary artists. Chavez also showcases that an inclusive approach allows instructors to deconstruct and examine their own biases, create academic spaces that prioritize creative thinking and concentration, empower students to use their own unique voices, and also encourage students to practice self-advocacy. Some benefits of prioritizing creativity in academic spaces. Creativity is a really important aspect of academia, I would say. In his article for Edutopia, music educator Neil Swap showcases a few examples of how an arts education and creative thinking can help students in the classroom. Swap suggests that skills that students learn in art courses can become useful beyond the classroom. He shows that students can become more confident through communication and encouragement from teachers and peers. He uses an example from that one of his band students was a pretty shy student, but was able to overcome her insecurities through encouraging environment through peers and through his own encouragement. Swap also showcases that communication is a key skill that students learn from the arts. He says that the arts are a mode of expression that transforms thoughts and emotions into a unique form of communication, art itself. Communication by way of arts education allows students to think differently about the way they interact with language, ideas, and their peers. And additionally, our Keith Sawyer suggests that students are more likely to use their skill in real-world applications when they have a deeper understanding of the material. Going off of Sawyer, I believe that communication skills, analytical thinking skills, and analytical thinking skills and other skills are key aspects that students learn within creative writing courses. As a creative writing student myself, I have realized and learned so many different skills throughout my program. And I think both in my undergraduate education and in my graduate education, the skills that I've learned in these creative courses and also just English courses, advanced composition courses, have allowed me to deepen my critical thinking skills due to analyzing and close reading various texts by my peers and by experts in the field. For this next section, I'm really going to be talking about Felicia Rose Chavez's text yet again, because I think this is a really great way to talk about inclusivity and think about it in a way that's, I think she talks about it mostly in terms of the writing workshop, but I think this is really applicable to classrooms that are not just writing workshops, as well as tutoring sessions and just the writing center as a whole. I think it's applicable beyond. So I'm just going to read the quote aloud because I think it's pretty straightforward. Chavez suggests to empower your marginalized students to speak from their knowledge, honor their influences, their imagination, and their intellectual curiosity. By doing so, you enrich your course's educational value. So like some of us have talked about earlier, listening is a key aspect, and Chavez, in order to prioritize inclusivity, encourages teachers and tutors and peers to listen to each other in order to have a great understanding of one another. If you follow this advice, you foster an environment of respect and mutual understanding. Environments where students feel safe are ones where students are willing to feel more honest and more willing to try because they know they'll be supported. Chavez wants to make the workshop space, and I would like to add in general academic spaces, to make them a general, respectful, welcoming environment. Moreover, Chavez claims that everyone must listen and everyone must learn. She suggests that educators should continuously evaluate their workshop core principles as well as your own personal principles. I think this is applicable to educators, tutors, and peer consultants as well. In order to craft an inclusive environment, we should all be aware of how we can grow. Chavez says that critical self-examination is pertinent to everyone looking to decolonize their thinking, to become more aware of what our students need across race and class. I'm going to leave that on the slide for a second because I think that is yet another quote that speaks for itself. Alrighty, so prioritizing creativity and agency. Chavez suggests that peer review, workshop, conversations, and critique should often focus on craft over content. She discusses how it's relevant for students to learn which craft moves are working or need assistance. This allows students more agency in the writing process. This also encourages inclusivity within the workshop as well. I think this is applicable to tutoring sessions as well, because I believe that the goal of the sessions is to help the students overall make sure that they become better writers, better thinkers. And I think focusing on ideas and craft moves instead of the actual content can be helpful. Additionally, Chavez emphasizes the importance of rethinking and redefining in the classroom. She suggests that students should be able to understand craft elements, but they should be able to do so in their own terms. They should be able to explain the concepts on their own. In her own classrooms, Chavez and her students collectively define voice, imagery, characterization, and arrangement in terms of craft. This is important in ensuring that all participants agree with the guidelines. I think that this is also important in tutoring sessions because it's good to make sure that both you and your tutor, or you and your tutee, are on the same page. And sometimes students have a misunderstanding because of the way things are explained. I think having a willingness to re-explain things in a way that helps the student fully understand. So whether using a mind map, drawing something out, talking about the topic, using multimodal options. I think that's a great way to try and engage the tutee and make sure that they understand what they need to know. And lastly, Chavez claims that listening is the foundation for maintaining a storytelling tradition. Throughout the book, Chavez continues to champion how important deep listening is when it comes to encouraging students. So some ways that that Chavez has showcased to prioritize creativity and agency. I've listed a couple of things that she's listed in her text. Writing rituals and hands-on activities are some really interesting things, some ways to bring student agency into the classroom, and I think it can also apply to the Writing Center. She suggests writing rituals such as the writer's notebook, which is basically where writers will collect different things that they find interesting or inspiring, whether quotes, images, their own writing. Free writing prompts are also really relevant. There are so many out there on the internet. Some of them are a little goofy, but I think that a lot of them can help generate ideas. And I think it's a great way to start brainstorming. I think that if a student is not sure where to start in an essay, having them free write, having them just do a little brain dump, I think is really helpful. The exquisite corpse sounds like very strange off the bat, but it's basically a writing exercise where one student writes one line, passes it to the next person, that person writes a line, and then folds over the top line for the next person. So it's just creating a story as a group. And I think going off of that, it's just a great collaborative activity. Weekend playlist is an activity where the student will go off on their own and explore, look around in nature, find things that they're interested in their own free time. And again, I think it's a great generative activity to get the student thinking. And then call and response is similar to exquisite corpse, where you're collaborating with your peers. And then as far as hands-on activities go, Chavez suggests that writing by hand really helps the writer feel they're basically, she suggests that the brain functions better when you're able to connect to activities with your hands. She suggests using like silly putty during workshops and stuff like that. So it's just a tool to help students think better and to be less focused on, it helps them focus a little bit more. And then also recommends studio arts as a way to get the brain flowing and just thinking differently. There are my sources. Does anyone have any questions? I know this is a little bit short, but.
Chavez's book you find most striking or most upsetting or most whatever?
I thought the most striking aspect of Chavez's book, honestly, I was enthralled with most of it. I think that I really enjoyed the activities she recommended. As a creative writer myself, I think having generative practices are really helpful. I also thought that the way she looked at workshops and ensuring that students have agency in workshop and making sure that both the students and the teacher are kind of at an even playing field in the classroom, where each word is weighted the same between the student and the teacher. I think that was something that really spoke to me, because I think having that almost equal ground in the classroom, I think it plays into that respect and that empathy. And I think that was something that it really inspired me. Any other questions?
I'm not sure that this is a question, but I really like the last slide with the activities that you had on it. I work solely in an online space, and so it is it's a challenge to sometimes socially connect with students. But I love these strategies because in an online space, students forget that they can do things outside of the keyboard, outside of the box to construct writing. And I was even reminded of this when I was interviewing an instructor for an online job position, and she took out like a one-page essay, and she was doing a lesson and instructed the students to cut it apart and consider different organizational options, and this very kinesthetic experience I think is so valuable to just address different learning styles and to keep students engaged, and and we have a lot of students who learn that way who are still of course into an online environment or choose to be. So I think that is very refreshing to think about, and the writing by hand is something so many of us are, even if we're not online, right, we're getting away from. So I really appreciate hearing those things and think about the implications of including them in writing center tutorials and sessions. And we've done the exquisite corp online too, guys.
It's absolutely a fun activity. The free writing prompts, the exquisite corpse, and the writing by hand are all things that my creative writing instructors sometimes try to implement. And I think that having that kinesthetic, the tactile activity instead of just visual, I think is really helpful for a lot of students. I think that processing and looking at things in a different way can help a lot of students. Me personally, I do like a mind map or something to start looking at topics in a different way. And I think that reframing how you're looking at certain topics during a tutoring session, during peer review, during just writing on your own time, I think it's really helpful. I absolutely agree with that. Yeah, I've done that before as well. I've been that person that's I don't know what to write. I don't know what to write. It's very helpful sometimes. Any other comments or questions?
I saw my earlier slides that I think shot is one of the outcomes maybe of this is deconstructing bias, but I'm wondering if her book specifically addressed that, or specifically addressed the creative activities to sort of move in that direction intentionally deconstructing bias.
So I think as far as the deconstructing bias goes, I think it comes down to communication and listening. Throughout the entire text, Chavez continuously emphasized how listening and self-evaluation are really critical in trying to deconstruct your own personal biases. And I think that by hearing other people out and also experiencing a wide range of reading and text by various peoples of various identities. Part of the reason that Chavez wants and suggests that teachers can deconstruct their identities is by trying to have a wide range of material to work with. Part of her writing workshop is ensuring that the students read writers of color, queer writers, to try and make sure that the range is open. And I also think that reading it from an inclusive body of text, I think it helps bring a new understanding of different identities into your life. And I think it helps educate. And I think through that education, through deep listening and communication and fostering that trust in an environment, I think that can help to start deconstruct these biases. It's absolutely a difficult process, but I think Chavez suggests to do those things, to listen, to communicate, to open yourself up to a wide range of perspectives as a way to just begin to deconstruct.
I think that could be especially useful if the students are in classrooms where they don't have the diverse curriculum, maybe the diverse readings, right? And they maybe don't have the access in the same way as they might want diversity, right? Imagine employing some of these more creative strategies, having them maybe write from the perspective of one of the characters for minutes to kind of get their juices going. Take a more creative approach could give them maybe good access to.
That is a potential option. I think trying to understand various perspectives and understand the impacts of those perspectives, I think is relevant. Yeah, thank you. Any other questions or comments?
So what would be the best way to creativity?
I would say during sessions, I think a great way to try and bring that creativity is to try and foster a communication and a bond, and to try and think of new ways to discuss things. Let's say you're talking about, let's see, an analytical essay or like a piece of personal narrative. I think a great way to bring creativity into that is to find new ways to phrase things. I think that coming up with a list of different ways to go about that, maybe drawing to try and generate ideas. I'd say writing by hand, again, that's great. I think creativity comes down to try and finding different ways to view things, because creativity, I think it's a kind of subjective, am I using that correct? It's kind of up to every individual person. And I think trying to find what the 2T finds to be creative, and also thinking about what you think to be creative and trying to bridge that gap and find new ways to discuss things and new ways to write things while still trying to aid the student the best that you can. I think that's a decent way. Does that kind of answer your question?
Yeah.